I called the probation parole office, asked them, can I pay them to put him on the box?
A Baltimore mother fighting to keep her son alive and off the streets. Her pleas to the Juvenile Justice Services to keep him out of trouble. The current Baltimore mayor and a former mayor facing off in next year's election. A look at where they stand on crime. And coming up later, Baltimore City ordered to show you the names of the people that donated to the Mosby Legal Defense Fund. A closer look at the legal battle going on right now.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
But when they break the law, then they want to charge us. They want to make us pay restitution. Hold the kids accountable.
A Baltimore mother at her wit's end with the Department of Juvenile Services. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Vincent Hill. Tonight, she tells Fox 45 she's been trying for years to keep her son out of trouble before it's too late.
Why should I be held accountable for what my child would do when I'm trying to get help?
Tiffany, not wanting to share her last name or show her face, has a lot to say about her 17-year-old son.
My son is a troubled teen. He's a good kid, but he's a troubled teen.
Trouble, she says, found its way into her home on more than one occasion.
On Instagram, he had guns. I saw shell casings in his room from him shooting a gun.
And police showing up to her house with a search warrant.
And they said it was for armed robbery and assault.
Back in June, her son was arrested and placed on home monitoring for a robbery near Morgan State. But Tiffany says it didn't keep him home or out of trouble.
He violated 3 times, but nobody in the system knew. I had to let his PO know.
This week, a judge had the GPS monitoring removed for good behavior. But this mom says she knows what's best.
He be around the wrong people, so he get into things. I called the probation parole office, asked them, can I pay them to put him on the box?
Filing countless emergency petitions with DJS to have her son committed. But she says she was turned away.
They told me down DGS today that they can't keep kids down there. And I asked why. They said because it's the rules, it's the laws.
Laws, Tiffany says, could be the downfall for her son, one way or the other.
My son already got shot 2 years ago in his leg. I'm scared for him losing his life to the streets or him hurting somebody else and going to jail.
And an update to a breaking story we first told you about last night. Police now confirming a 14-year-old girl was shot in West Baltimore. It happened around 7:30 near Carver Vocational School. She is currently listed in stable condition. Investigators believe she was shot on Preston Street. Anyone with information is asked to call Baltimore police or submit an anonymous tip through Metro Crime Stoppers. In just a couple of days, state leaders will hold a virtual hearing on this juvenile crime crisis. Now, as we've been reporting, there's been an alarming spike in youth violence across the state this year. Both the number of crimes committed by kids and the number of youth victims has skyrocketed. That meeting is being held online, but Fox 45 will be in Annapolis pressing lawmakers for answers on what impact they hope the meeting will have. And the Juvenile Interrogation Act is one of the laws some prosecutors and police are calling on lawmakers to change. The law requires an attorney to be consulted and parents to be notified before a juvenile is questioned by police, either as a suspect or a witness. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost questioned Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates about the plan and why he's sounding the alarm.
I strongly believe it's unconstitutional.
Why?
When you look at the act and you look at the law, the 5th, the 6th, and the 14th Amendment, certain rights we have. And when you look at Miranda, and that's where you advise of your rights. What Miranda says is that as the government and the state must advise an individual, doesn't say their age, doesn't say their sex, their race, anything like this, an individual of the right to remain silent, the right to have an attorney. And so what we've done is you look at how the Supreme Court has applied that. You cannot force an individual to have a lawyer or to consult with a lawyer. I believe that we're trying to take away some rights by acting like we're giving any others. And that's unfortunately what I feel is the beginning of the end. We must protect the rights of the minors as well as making sure parents have the right to be parents to their children.
So what do lawmakers need to do? When
we've done all the research on our end and we're continually doing research, then I think it'll be incumbent upon us to move that narrative so that the lawmakers will understand how this law violates people's constitutional rights, and the lawmakers will have to make that decision. Otherwise, I'm sure eventually there'll be some public defender or defense attorney that will challenge the law. So either lawmakers will decide what happened or the court will decide what happened.
Bates says he's talking with state leaders about ways to address the juvenile crime surge. Mackenzie will have more from her interview with state's attorney Ivan Bates right here on Fox 45 tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. And it's not just Bates who's concerned with the current juvenile laws. Fox 45 has heard from a number of other prosecutors who say the current policy is handcuffing them when it comes to making sure kids face consequences for their actions.
They know that, nothing's really going to happen to them if they keep their crime in a certain limit of types of crime.
They come in, we can't detain them. They're back in the community the next day. They get picked up for the second one. Can't detain them. They're back in the community again the next day.
And police also weighing in, saying it's impossible to do their jobs under the current policy.
Under the new laws of the state of Maryland, it has become more difficult for police to question young people about anything.
We're living in a time where, unfortunately, legislators, lawmakers have decided that it's better to support the lawbreakers rather than those who are enforcing the law.
And despite the overwhelming calls for change, one of the authors of the state's juvenile justice laws refuses to budge. Senator Jill Carter, who represents Baltimore City, says she stands by her legislation. She's pointing the finger back at prosecutors and law enforcement, saying they're misunderstanding what options they have under that policy.
I think that police and prosecutors need to be better educated if they're believing that they can't do anything, which I don't know why they would believe that.
House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis. If you want to make your voice heard ahead of next week's hearing, we have their numbers and email addresses listed for you there on your screen. To reach Jones, you can call 410-841-3800. For Ferguson, that number is 410-841-3600. And if you'd like to connect with more of your elected leaders, our website is making that quite easy for you. Just go to foxbaltimore.com. Click on the menu at the top left of your screen and select lawmakers. From there, you can enter your home address to find officials who represent you at the local, state, and federal levels. So that brings us to our question of the day. Is the General Assembly responsible for the surge in juvenile crime? So far, 94% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, just head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. Now to your election 2024 coverage. The race for Mayor of Baltimore is starting to shape up with two candidates, the current mayor and a former mayor, gearing up for a rematch. Fox 45's Taylor Stewart takes a look at what it will take for each of them to win over Baltimore voters.
PR expert Doug Eldridge says whoever comes out on top will have to sell voters on their message about crime, children education, and commerce in the city of Baltimore.
And now incumbent Mayor Brandon Scott and former Mayor Sheila Dixon will spend the next 14 months trying to convince Baltimore voters who is best equipped to tackle those issues. Dixon's campaign launch sets the stage for a 2020 rematch. She narrowly lost by 2% of that vote back in 2020. But Doug Eldridge, head of Achilles PR, says the familiarity of both of these candidates makes this race less about optics and more about output.
Likability is really not going to be on the ballot this year. It's going to be results and resume.
When it comes to results on improving education, he says Baltimore City's chronic absentee rates and standardized test scores do not bode well for Scott's reelection.
In that regards, Dixon has the advantage because she's not the incumbent. So the culpability for the current status doesn't fall on her shoulders. But from a voter standpoint, the children in the education system is unquestionably the biggest concern because that dovetails into crime rates, specifically juvenile crime rates.
The Scott administration is touting success in reducing both fatal and non-fatal shootings this year. But that's after 2 years of historically high homicide rates under his own watch. During Scott's first year in office, the city saw 338 homicides and 335 his second. Despite improving numbers this year, the city's own crime data shows an increasing number of young people falling victim to and being the suspects in violent crime, as well as a skyrocketing number of car thefts.
Scott doesn't have the advantage of recency bias because of how things are trending right now.
Looking at Dixon's time in office, homicides dropped 17% in her first year. A year before she took office, Baltimore recording 282 homicides. And a year later, that number falling to just 234. and then 240 the next. At the same time, Baltimore's 48th mayor also faces the challenge of making sure voters can see past her 2010 perjury charge that triggered her resignation.
She said, yeah, I did it. I acknowledged it. But more importantly, let me tell you why I failed you by doing that. But perhaps most importantly, let me tell you how I'm moving forward and how I am now better situated to serve you.
I look at city government today and I don't recognize it anymore. I see firsthand that it's letting people down daily.
While this race could come down to a referendum on the direction the city is heading in, make no mistake, Eldridge says if the Democratic primary leads to a Dixon-Scott rematch, it will be a tight race.
It's going to be a knife fight, no pun intended, to see who gets it out to the general.
Taylor Stewart, Fox 45 News.
And it's important to note, while Mayor Scott has been touting the decrease in homicides and non-fatal shootings this year, saying it's because of his crime-fighting strategy, Maryland U.S. Attorney Eric Barron points to his new partnership with City State's Attorney Ivan Bates.
We think it's clear, and the data demonstrates that it's because we're working as a team. We're working collaboratively. We're being more focused about following the money on those who commit violent acts in our communities. Many of those violent acts are driven by money, whether it be illegal drugs or drug trafficking. And so we're really focused on better following the money as an additional means of taking violent criminals out of our communities.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, 2 legal victories for Marilyn Mosby in her upcoming federal trial, the ruling to move her case out of Baltimore and have her trial split in 2. Scott Thuman hitting the campaign trail to talk with presidential hopefuls, coming up a one-on-one interview with Republican candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. And the Harford County Sheriff's Office sharing an update in the death of Rachel Morin, what we're learning about the investigation. Two major rulings this week in the federal case against former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. We've learned her trial will be moved out of Baltimore, and the case will be split into 2 trials. Her criminal trial will now be held in Greenbelt. Her attorneys argued extensive media coverage would make it hard for Mosby to have a fair trial here in Baltimore. In another ruling, it was decided the fraud and perjury case will be heard separately. It's unclear which case will be heard first. Meanwhile, the Maryland Compliance Board is ordering Baltimore City's Board of Ethics to release the names of those who donated to the legal fund of Marilyn Mosby and her ex-husband, City Council President Nick Mosby. The fund has been a source of controversy. And tonight, Maxine Stryker takes a closer look at that order and the city's response.
It was Fox 45 who first confirmed the existence of the Mosby Legal Defense Fund in July 2021. The fund was launched to offset legal costs for the city's former power couple, Nick and Marilyn Mosby, who have since announced divorce. Months after the fund's creation, Marilyn Mosby, the city's former state's attorney, was federally indicted on charges of perjury and making a false statement on a loan application. Ever since, we've been questioning the transparency of the defense fund and just who's been donating.
Just one question about the need for a legal defense fund.
Will you disclose the donors to your legal defense fund?
Our questions were dodged time and time again, but now it seems those donors will finally come to light. The Maryland Public Information Act Compliance Board is ordering the Baltimore City Board of Ethics to release the list of those who donated. The Compliance Board finding the Board of Ethics violated the state's Public Information Act by redacting the names of more than 100 donors when it released the list to two separate news outlets. The Ethics Board argued the names included financial information and would not shed any light on the activities or workings of the board. But according to the Compliance Board, campaign finance activity is not ordinarily protected financial information. In their decision, they say the donations are relevant to understanding who might be seeking to curry favor with powerful elected officials. City Council President Nick Mosby was not charged in the federal investigation, but did fail to disclose donations to the Legal Defense Fund on his ethics disclosure forms last year. The Ethics Board finding he violated the city's rules and ordered him to shut it down and identify the donors. When Fox 45 requested that list in March, we received 8 pages of donations totaling less than $15,000, and the donors' names were redacted.
There should have been no back and forth. There should have been no reviewing this. This is information that should have been published at the very beginning of this process.
David Williams with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance says this years-long saga has only further eroded trust and transparency within city government.
People need to have all this information at their fingertips, and especially when you have people that are under investigation, it is critical that everyone sees who's donating to a fund and just to have all this information available.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Now, we did reach out to the city solicitor, Ebony Thompson, regarding the city's next steps. She told the Baltimore Sun they plan to appeal that ruling in circuit court. All right, let's switch gears right now. You're taking a live look at the weather radar on our cameras in Towson and Inner Harbor. That heat wave finally moving out of the way, starting to cool down, thank goodness. But the rain is moving in, and Jasmine, it may affect the Ravens opener tomorrow around 1 o'clock, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, we are in a very unsettled pattern, and we have the chance for showers and storms once again tomorrow. If you are heading to the Ravens game, you'll want to make sure that you have the rain gear handy and that you're keeping watch on the radar. Right now, we're mostly dry. We had those showers and storms move over the state, a ton of lightning in some areas with heavy rain. But now that rain is continuing to push to our north and to our east, and we're going to stay mostly dry for the night. Around the state, we're seeing temperatures in the 70s, certainly a lot lower. We had another hot and humid day, but you'll notice lower temperatures for the upcoming week. First, tomorrow, we'll be in the low 80s with showers and storms. Then for Monday, the mid 80s. And after that, a little bit higher. We've got the upper 80s on Tuesday. And notice over the next 3 days, we're talking the chance for showers and potential storms. After that, we'll still have rain, but we'll have lower temperatures for the second half of the week. I'll let you know what you can expect in my Weather Authority forecast. Back to you.
We are less than 24 hours away from kickoff at M&T Bank Stadium as the Ravens put their new offense and offseason additions on display. In front of that home crowd, so much anticipation for a Baltimore team that had so much uncertainty just a few months ago. Questions about Lamar Jackson's future and the wide receivers room that have now been answered. Now, the moment players and coaches have been waiting for. The season opener against the Houston Texans Sunday at 1 p.m.
Tell you what, I'm excited about this team. And we're going to have a big challenge in front of us. I mean, I've seen Houston on tape in the preseason. You can see that they're a reflection of their coaching staff. They got a lot of young players. They're fast, they're physical, they fly around, they play super hard. So we're going to have to be at our very best to win that game.
Still ahead, we'll preview the AFC North ahead of those Week 1 showdowns, plus Patrick Queen's mindset for Week 1. That's coming up when Sports Unlimited returns.
Coming up, a mother losing the fight to keep her daughter out of trouble, why she says the state is not doing enough to stop the juvenile crime crisis. And the family of a murdered Harford County woman is asking the public to help find her killer. The new details coming to light in the Rachel Morin case.
He is shaking up the race for the White House. So who is Vivek Ramaswamy, and how did he go from virtually unknown candidate to a contender? We hit the trail with him coming up for our campaign conversation.
In a crowded field of politicians, all aiming for the White House, it can be a challenge to stand out, but one Republican candidate has found a way to steal that spotlight, at least for the moment. Sinclair Chief Political Correspondent Scott Thuman spent time with Vivek Ramaswamy and his first of his campaign conversations.
Thank you. Walk even a few feet with Vivek Ramaswamy through these New Hampshire fairgrounds, and you're struck by how much has changed in just a matter of months.
What's going on, brother? How you doing? I'm doing great. People are responding like wildfire to it, and I think it's really lifting us up.
You said wildfire.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Well, frankly, I mean, we've gone from not 0%, but 0.0% in the polls in March to second place in many national polls now. And I think that that's still with many people in this country not yet really knowing who I am.
Can I get a picture?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Now he's attracting crowds seeking selfies and loaded with questions about where this multimillionaire entrepreneur and author stands on the issues.
What does it mean to be American? It means we believe in the ideals of the American Revolution.
Aboard his campaign bus, questions about his abundance of ambition. You've never held any public office.
That's right.
What makes you think you deserve to have the highest job in the land? Why not run for a senator?
Different skill set required for that. I mean, I think that
being a U.S. Senator requires, getting into the sausage making of partisan politics. What I think we require in the U.S. presidency right now is someone who has an independent vision and somewhat of a disregard for the norms of Washington, D.C.
You tweeted out that clip of yourself, if you recall, 20 years ago, asking Al Sharpton.
Of all the Democratic candidates out there, why should I vote for the one with the least political experience?
Doesn't that feel a little hypocritical now?
Well, 20 years later, you know what? I've changed my mind on a lot of things. Turns out I don't believe everything I did at the age of 18.
You said that former President Trump's the greatest president of this century. So why should people vote for you when you've said this guy's number one?
So far. However, we have to aspire to more. I think I'm single-handedly best equipped to reunite this country.
The 38-year-old who made a fortune in the biotech industry wants to make an even bigger mark in Washington with radical proposals like disbanding the FBI, IRS, and Department of Education. He's been attacked for his plans to let Russia retain some captured parts of Ukraine, hesitation to call Putin a war criminal, and his idea of eventually scaling back support to Taiwan against China. You've heard people say amateur hour. You heard Nikki Haley say no foreign policy, and it shows. How do you dispel that?
So if somebody's crashing your car for the last 25 years, maybe you don't want to turn over your keys to the same people to drive it again. I think I have the clearest path to avoid
stealing cars. Now, that mother is far from the only one voicing those concerns. Mackenzie Frost has more.
This story really underscores what we continue to hear from parents, prosecutors, and the police. They say that current juvenile justice laws are not teaching kids consequences for their actions, and that crimes are escalating. Being a mom of a teenager can be tough. Wow, and they come all the time?
Every day.
But this Baltimore mom is facing an uphill battle with her daughter.
When she came home, she went out and stole a car that night and been getting arrested since on home detention.
Ray doesn't want to share her last name or face. She does want to share her story, and it's eye-opening.
She stole the vehicle. They called me so abruptly in the middle of the day. I let them know that she does this. She get in trouble every day, crime. Y'all keep letting her off the hook. She's going to come home and do the same thing.
An ankle monitor doesn't stop Ray's 14-year-old daughter from stealing cars, and keeping her at home under control is a losing battle.
But she's been arrested ever since. On home detention, they still won't do nothing. They won't violate her. And they're teenagers. They know what they're doing. They know right from wrong. They need to start locking these kids up. They need to change the laws.
It's that plea for change that's coming from more than just parents. Police.
Under the new laws of the state of Maryland, it has become more difficult for police to question young people about anything.
And prosecutors saying the same thing.
There's nothing the law will allow us to do to hold them accountable. And they're doing whatever they want.
They know that, you know, nothing's really going to happen to them if they keep their crime in a certain limit of types of crime.
They come in, we can't detain them, they're back in the community the next day.
But some lawmakers, like one of the architects of the juvenile justice law, Senator Joe Carter, says police and prosecutors don't understand the laws and are missing what their role is to play.
The belief that laws need to be changed because nothing can be done is part of a false narrative that's been spread. So that's something that I don't know if it's a lack of education on law enforcement or not, but it's something that they need to know that they can avail themselves of.
You have to put accountability measures in place.
Zach Smith, a criminal justice policy expert, says sometimes kids don't want to take the help being offered, and it's up to lawmakers to change the parameters, especially as frustration from the community builds.
You're increasingly seeing members of the community, including parents and relatives who care about these juveniles, as well as victims' families, speaking out, saying that there needs to be accountability until lawmakers get serious about combating this juvenile crime crisis in their communities. You're going to continue to see the same results.
While lawmakers, prosecutors, and leaders all call for more parental accountability,
We tried everything, literally.
this Baltimore mom says she's trying everything.
I worry about my daughter not living till her birthday.
And she says it's the laws that need to change.
I think that's so unfair because it's parents like me who fought and it's asking for help and nobody is doing anything. Stop blaming the parents when things go wrong, when it's clearly a failed system.
The first step towards change could come next week when the House Judiciary Committee holds a hearing to hear from prosecutors as well as the Department of Juvenile Services. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And coming up in just a couple of days, state leaders will hold a virtual hearing on the juvenile crime crisis. If you want to make your voice heard, House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis. We have their numbers and email addresses listed for you here on your screen. And if you'd like to contact more of your elected leaders, our website is making that easy. Go to foxbaltimore.com. Click the menu at the top left of your screen and select lawmakers. From there, you can enter your home address to find the officials who represent you at the local, state, and federal levels. So let's check in on our question of the day. Is the General Assembly responsible for the surge in juvenile crime right now? 94% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. It's been more than a month since the body of 37-year-old Rachel Morin was found on the Ma and Pa Trail in Bel Air. As the search for her killer continues, today her family came together to share new information with the public. The family handing out these flyers. Fox 45 reported earlier this week that Morin's family enlisted the help of a criminal profiler to write a description of the suspect. The flyer listing the traits the profiler has identified so far, including the belief that the suspect could be a serial killer. Family says it may help more people come forward with information.
The reason we're doing that is to get this information in front of as many eyes as possible, because we completely believe that there is somebody in this immediate area who knows who the suspect is. It could be that they don't want to come forward, or maybe they just don't have the information. Maybe they don't realize they have that critical piece of information because they didn't hear anything on the news.
The Harford County Sheriff's Office told Fox 45 on Tuesday that they're looking into leads in Chicago, but declined to explain why. The Sheriff's Office also releasing a video yesterday to discuss progress on the case. Sheriff Jeff Gaylor says investigators have collected and watched hours of video footage from around the trail, including nearby homes and businesses. He says the department's forensic unit is reviewing text, phone calls, and cell phone location data. The sheriff also saying this is not a cold case and, quote, far from it.
We are still receiving the results of technological and scientific evidence and following up on new leads. There is still work to be done, and I have not given up hope. My investigators have not given up hope that we will find the killer, and neither should you.
This video marks the first update from the sheriff's office in over 2 weeks. Taking a look at video of the suspect in Morin's case, according to police, the suspect pictured on the left of your screen is about 5'9" and about 160 pounds and of Hispanic descent. In terms of finding a DNA match, one law enforcement expert believes detectives will use sites like 23andme.com to find a potential distant relative of the suspect.
Like a cousin or a second cousin or a third cousin. And then that investigator has a lead to work from, knowing that they have a second or third cousin. And then they start making phone calls and, do you know so-and-so? Have you heard from so-and-so?
The reward for anyone with an information leading to an arrest is up to $10,000. If you'd like to leave a tip, you can call the Harford County Sheriff's Office or email rmtips@harfordsheriff.org. All right, I tell you what, it was a very, very hot week. That's starting to go away, but
finally,
the storms woke me up last night. So how long are those going to be around?
Oh, it was so stormy last night. Even today we had those showers and storms following the heat, but More storms tomorrow.
Ravens, 1 o'clock.
Yes, it doesn't look like a washout. So there's a little bit of good news, but you may want to have the ponchos, the rain gear, just in case there are some stray showers around the city. Temperature is currently at 75, and we are back to dry weather. Mostly cloudy right now over Baltimore, and around the rest of the state, temperature is mainly in the 60s and 70s as we see a nice cool down. It was another hot and steamy day with highs in the upper 80s, meaning an end to our heat wave. Notice on the HD radar, showers are continuing to push north, clearing our state, and will stay mostly dry for the night. This is all as we deal with a stalled front over our region. Unfortunately, that remains stalled tomorrow, and that's going to mean more showers and the potential of storms, but not everyone's seeing that rain. Overnight, our temperatures will drop to the 60s and 70s, mild as you wake up in the morning. And then for the afternoon, we're looking at the mid-80s, low to mid-80s. So a nice change in temperatures, but we do have that chance for showers and storms. Mostly dry on Monday. Temperature is slightly higher in the mid-80s. And then we're talking the upper 80s on Tuesday with a slight chance for a few stray showers. So on the future scan, notice tomorrow morning we start with showers and storms, especially seeing some of that heavy rain along parts of the eastern shore, but it does begin to taper. There could be a few stray showers around 1 p.m. for the Ravens game, but as we head later into the afternoon, that rain begins to taper. We still could be dealing with some showers along the eastern shore, but we are talking more rain for the night. This does clear by daybreak on Monday. It looks mostly dry for the day with a mix of sunshine and clouds, but we'll have those showers and storms return on Tuesday. We'll have an even greater chance for showers on Wednesday, but after that, we finally welcome in a drier forecast along with lower, more fall-like temperatures. So tonight we'll drop to 70 with mostly cloudy skies. It'll feel a little bit muggy. Then tomorrow we're looking at showers as we start the day and a few stray showers. Rain tapers as we head into the afternoon and evening. 83 for the high temperature. This is followed by temperatures a little bit higher for Monday. 86. Then we'll be in the upper 80s on Tuesday, the low 80s on Wednesday, and then we're talking the 70s with plenty of sunshine on Thursday. After that, we'll be in the upper 70s and low 80s as we head into the weekend. Back to you.
Former President Trump makes his return to the campaign trail amid his flurry of legal cases. The Iowa versus Iowa State football game today vying for attention in the early voting state. He isn't the only one, with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and other Republican candidates also at the game. This after Trump rallied in South Dakota Friday night.
This is a big moment in our country because we're either going to go one way or the other. And if we go the other, we're not going to have a country left. We will fight together, we will win together, and then we will seek justice together.
Trump still remains far ahead in the Republican primary voting despite facing 91 felony charges across 4 criminal cases. He maintains that he did nothing wrong, alleging that prosecutors are trying to interfere with his election hopes. A concerning number of Americans are coming down with serious illness after COVID or a COVID vaccine. One doctor turned medical detective who's treating more than 1,000 patients is producing some groundbreaking research. It's leading to novel treatment for people whose other doctors were mystified by their illness.
I always say it's almost like there's 2 worlds. There's before COVID and after